Toronto's been super hot lately and are looking like a real threat to possibly win a playoff series or even two in the Eastern Conference this year. Toronto, in my opinion, has one of the most interesting rosters in the league and are able to consistently roll out lineups with four guys over 6'6", with Gary Trent, OG, Pascal, and Scotty Barnes being the main four. And of course, they have all-star guard Fred VanVleet in the backcourt to support them. The craziest part of these lineups is that none of them are prototypical centers, and they're all able to switch 1 through 5, at least during the course of a possession. Of course, they do have options at center too. They're not like the Houston Rockets with PJ Tucker, but I think they're much more interesting playing these lineups of insanely athletic, super switchable guys. And that was a weird time in the NBA, having PJ Tucker being a starting center in the Western Conference. Some of these Toronto lineups really remind me of the Warriors when they had KD, with their ability to roll out lineups that can switch like crazy and run in transition. Of course, they're not nearly the force that the Warriors were back when they had KD, but they look pretty good. I think it honestly helps them that they had a down year last year, and teams are not expecting them to be a force when they're playing them this year. They're probably going to these games not expecting much and just kind of laying down, and that's when the Raptors strike. Anyways, when it comes to individual players who have been standouts this year, I think you have to start with Fred VanVleet, who, as I mentioned earlier, is an all-star this year. And deservedly so, since the dude's putting up 21, 4, and 7 on 40% shooting from the three-point line. The threes are VanVleet's bread and butter. We remember this from the 2019 championship run, and he's attempting 10 a game this year, which at a first glance seems like a lot, but when you're making 4 of them on average, it's definitely warranted. He's got super deep range and is able to hit them contested and off the dribble. Also, Siakam looks like an all-star again, putting up over 22 points, 8 rebounds, and 5 assists a game. His three-point percentage is back up to where it was when he was an all-star, and he's being put in much more advantageous positions for him to score. Here the Raptors clear out the middle of the floor and allow Siakam to go to work on the slower-footed Capella. That spin move was nice. I like this play too, as they have 2 players clear out to the right over here and another to the left in the corner, and then they run a pick and roll with Siakam and Banton. If we start play here, we see Hunter begin to shift his weight, and then Siakam just rejects the screen, hits him with a bump, and finishes. Alright, to be a little cynical, I'm still worried about this team come playoff time because they've got absolutely nobody to guard the centers like Embiid with Philly. Sure, guys on this team like Boucher, for instance, who averaged nearly 2 blocks a game last year, are nice in theory, but the dude's a beanpole and is not going to be able to guard centers when it comes down to the playoffs. Now, to counter this, I think they're definitely going to be a scary defense to go up against if you're a Chicago or Brooklyn, for instance, that relies more so on guard and forward play. In the playoffs, teams with great isolation guys like DeRozan or Levine want to isolate against the weak link in the defense, and Toronto just simply doesn't have this unless they're playing guys like Malachi Flynn, who is alright on defense, but I think is going to fall out of the rotation come real playoffs. And yeah, piggybacking off this point, having VanVleet and Gary Trent as your primary defenders in the backcourt is amazing, since both of these guys are great on ball and are extremely active in passing lanes. These guys are absolute freaking nightmares on defense, and it's also one of the most entertaining things to watch. Alright, looking down the road at another interesting playoff opponent, or possible playoff opponent, is Milwaukee. I think they have a decent shot of at least slowing down Giannis to an extent. Of course, I think we've all seen throughout Giannis's relatively short career that he cannot be stopped, at least completely, but he can be slowed. And of course, as a defense, that's really all you're trying to do, since nobody's taking these elite guys out of games completely. But being able to throw weapons like OG, Siakam, Barnes at Giannis gives you a lot of versatility and a slight chance of causing turnovers and preventing him to get to the rim, at least super easily. And of course, back in 2019, Nick Nurse was really the first coach to popularize the wall as a defensive strategy against Giannis, so they should be pretty well equipped to run it. Now again, not to be super negative, but another issue this team may have come playoff time is with their offense, because I believe that once teams can really game plan for VanVleet and Siakam, defenses are probably going to have a decent level of success, at least in limiting their individual offensive production. And this leaves it to the other guys on the team who I can see stepping up for games here and there, but I'd be very worried over the course of a long, grueling playoff series against one of these Eastern Conference opponents. Now, honestly, I really wish the Raptors sucked more because maybe my Bulls could have an easy first-round series, but instead we're going to have to play either them, KD, Kyrie, and Simmons, or the 2 all-star, one all-star, snub all-star forwards in Boston.